Hello there. This is an astrological forecast for Scorpio for October of 2012. And this also applies if you have a Scorpio ascendant. First thing to say, my dear Scorpios, for those of you that have a birthday this month, happy birthday. I hope this year is going to be a really happy, healthy and successful year ahead for you. The big news is, I'm sure many of you already know, that Saturn, the great teacher, changes sign on October 5th and moves into your sign, Scorpio, for the next 2 years and 8 months. So this is a very important time for you, Scorpios. This is a period of great internal growth for you. It's a time to look over these last several years and to say to yourself, well, what have I learned about myself over these last several years? Where do I want my life to go now? It's a time of restructuring your life. So it may be a time of some lessons, some hard lessons, some heavy responsibilities, but it's also a time where you can make some great accomplishments. It's where you can really do some very good things. It's important that you start to put into your life some new structures. And what is also important, I find, with Saturn coming into this first house for people, is that you don't try to take on too much. Very often you Scorpios, you really think you can accomplish so much and you are very single-minded, and that often you can. But with Saturn coming into your sign, it's very important that you break things down into bite-sized pieces. Don't try to do everything in one go. So for example, I had a client, she moved country, she was selling properties, she was starting a new job. It was just all too much for her. So I encouraged her just to start to do things bit by bit, to try to sell just one property at a time, to just try to do just one thing at a time so that things were not overwhelming. Because as well, if you overdo it during this time, Scorpios, then it can affect your physical health as well. It's a time for good discipline with your diet, with your exercise habits. And many of you Scorpios can be very disciplined, and some of you go the other way and you're totally undisciplined, or you have spurts between one and the other. But this Saturn transit will enable you to get more discipline and more structure into your life so you can accomplish more of the things that you really want. But it will be a time to turn inward. It's not so much an outward time, it will be an inward time where you're studying yourself, your behavior patterns. Are some of them destructive, or is it causing you to get into abusive relationships? Is it causing you to not make the kind of money that you really feel you could earn? All these things will come under question during this transit now, when Saturn on the 5th of October comes into your sign. Don't be frightened of it. It's a time for regeneration, for growth, for getting rid of the things that don't make you happy anymore, and for creating new possibilities for yourself over the next several years. Now let's get down to the specifics. We've got Venus for much of the month in your 11th house. This is a wonderful time for friends, to go out meeting friends. It's a good time for business conferences. It's a good time for coaching, teaching, training, anything involving working with groups. It's also a good time for meeting somebody who could start out as a friend and then becomes a romantic relationship later on. Towards the end of the month, Venus goes into your 12th house. So this is a time more for spiritual reflection, good time for astrology, for metaphysics, for mystical arts, and a good time just for spending time on your own and enjoying that alone time. We've got Mars in your first house for the first week of the month. So this is a very good time for doing anything athletic, anything physical. It's a good time for fighting for your needs and your wants, for what it is that you really want, because you're going to be very dominant during this period. And it's really not a good time to do things independently, because you're going to get a lot done. For the last few weeks of the month, then we've got Mars going into your second house of finance. So there may be some arguments over physical possessions, what you own, not necessarily property, but things. But it's a good time for putting energy into a business, for creating new ways of making money. It's also a possible time where you may make an impulsive purchase, so be careful that you make sure you've got enough money to make that purchase. Just the kind of thing where you go out and say, I've always wanted that I'm going to have it now. That's Mars in the second house. So just make sure you rein it in if necessary, but you will be able to get a lot of work done. We've got Jupiter in your 8th house. So that balances some of the seriousness of Saturn, because Jupiter in the 8th could well bring an inheritance to you, some money from somebody else, or some good fortune coming financially to you, maybe by way of a grant or a sponsorship or a scholarship or an award, something coming from somebody else. Towards the very end of the month, we've got a full moon in your 7th house. So this could bring a relationship into your life. It could bring an existing relationship to a head, where there are some decisions to be made, some choices to be made, but it will shine a light onto your relationships so that you can see them more clearly. And if changes need to be made, then you can implement those changes next month. We've still got the backdrop all month of Pluto square to Uranus from your 3rd to your 6th house. So important Scorpios, you're going to feel as though you can't stand authority figures at the moment, as though you want to break out from them. There also could be some sudden changes in the workplace where you may have to be more adaptable. You're a fixed sign, you don't particularly like a lot of change in one go, but there could be some changes in work and you may just need to turn on a dime and look for something else, or move to a different department, or change what you're doing completely. But lots of opportunities nonetheless, because Uranus will still bring you some new opportunities, even amidst all this turbulence and all this change. So there you have it, my dear Scorpios. I wish you a great month, a very happy, happy birthday. And thank you to so many of you who pass the videos on, who make comments, who get in touch for readings. You might want to have a solar return reading about what this year holds in store for you from your birthday onwards. Whatever it is, I'm always delighted to hear from you. Thank you for listening. Bye for now.